Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an outrageous homeowner association demands I sign over my 100-year-old inherited property to them. They claim it belongs to the HOA and ended up vandalizing my house. Here is what happened, let's dive right in. When I was 31, my mother passed away, and as the only child, I was set to inherit the house. It actually started as belonging to my grandparents, and the house was built in the 1920s. So basically, it's an old building. The good news is that it had no mortgage, so it was easy for me and my husband to move in. And yeah, Ripe stars, I would hope that after 100 years there's no mortgage on the house. Anyway, we were in our early 30s with student debt and more than willing to take a free house. I knew that this house came with an acre of land, but what I didn't know was it also came with an HOA that liked to be a pain in my back. One thing to note is that neither one of us looks like we are 30, I am 5 foot tall and my face never really changed since I graduated college. My husband is a clean-shaven man, so many people assume that he is young as well. I'm not saying that the HOA came after us because they assumed we were young and dumb, but it did cause them to be condescending in how we were spoken to. That I will get to in a minute though. We moved in and everything seemed okay until we started getting letters from the HOA talking about needing to pay HOA dues. We did not sign up for the HOA, but it was in my name, so I opened up the mail to see what it was about. They were not just asking us for dues, but claiming that we owed thousands in retroactive dues my mother did not pay. Even though there was never any evidence she was a member of this HOA. Also, most of these were dated from after she died and before we moved into the house. They were demanding HOA money when nobody was even living in the home at the time, and my husband told me to just ignore it, and I did. I am not great at just letting things go and found myself online looking things up about homeowner associations and if they can send bills like that. It was actually how I first found this site and the stories. While enjoyable, they kind of freaked me out even more about what could happen to me. I told my husband the next day that I wanted to speak to them and try and get this sorted. That was how I found myself having a meeting with the HOA president. HOA president, what can I do for you today? Me, hi. I live at this address and I wanted to talk about these letters and bills that I was getting. I never actually joined the HOA, so I don't know why I'm getting these. HOA president, oh sweetie, let me explain how this works. See, in an HOA you pay every month and we take care of the neighborhood. You cannot ignore it like homework though, or we can actually force you to give us the money. Me, no, I know how an HOA works, but I never joined it. And the retroactive bills from my mom, they were billed after she died. We are not responsible for any of that. HOA president, I know that it can be confusing, sweetie. See, your house is owned by the HOA. We allow you to live in it, but if you cannot pay us what is in those letters, you need to sign this. She put papers in front of me that she didn't think I would read or understand. There was some heavy legalese, but I actually took a couple pre-law courses and could scarce salt by. It was a form for me signing over the rights to the property to the HOA and basically giving up my inherited house. Me, I'm not signing this. You are trying to trick me into just signing over the house because you think I'm some clueless person. It was a huge insult and I knew it was because she assumed I was younger than I was. With how she was calling me sweetie and the tone she was using that I might use with a 5-year-old. I stormed out of there without signing a damn thing, and it took me about an hour of ranting to my husband before he could calm me down. We got even more letters and calls about needing to join the HOA and sign over the house or else we would be in huge trouble. They were not giving up, but neither were we, so it seemed to be a stalemate. That is until they upped the game and came over one day for a final warning. And well, that warning was a brick through every single window of my house with a note attached that next time the brick would be for my head. So they were actually destroying the house and threatening to kill me because I would not give them my family home. The bricks opened a new door for us and we got a lawyer very fast. Threatening to kill us with the clear intent was a crime. Hell, even throwing the bricks could be seen as attempted murder in front of the judge. Not to mention trespassing, property damage and vandalism. We were making a lawsuit to throw everything against a wall and see what managed to stick. Charges were filed and the HOA president claimed that she didn't know anything about the bricks or even who I was. We have a camera by the front door that you can clearly see it was her throwing the bricks. She did not even try to hide her face or anything, mixed with the letters in the mail having her frickin' signature on it. She was clearly not the brightest bulb and facing some serious charges now that she didn't have much of a defense against. The cherry on top was the judge made a mention of her being back in his courtroom, implying that this was not the first time she did something crazy and got in trouble for it. I also know that coming back means a judge is not gonna go easy on you, especially if you did it the first time. I have no idea what she did before, but I would not be shocked if it was something similar that she managed to talk her way out of. Her defense was saying that we were just teenagers and did not understand home ownership or what an HOA was. It did not matter at all, but when she found out that we were fully grown adults, she turned a shade of red and it made me a little happy. The judge was not happy with the crap that she pulled, and she was getting in trouble for most of the charges thrown at her. Instead of going to trial, she made a plea deal with the county, but it still ended up with her going to prison for a while. This of course meant that she lost her position as HOA president, which she looked more upset about than going to literal prison. Maybe she thought it would be cool like TV shows or something. Don't know, don't care. All that mattered was she was gone, and the rest of the HOA knew that we were not ones to be messed with. In fact, they were responsible for getting us window replacements, which honestly turned out to be for the best. They were very old and needed to be updated anyway, at least now we didn't need to pay for it. So HOA, if you are listening, if you want to vandalize our house again, maybe destroy the bathroom, it could use a remodel. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm so glad that this HOA Karen president faced the consequences for her stupid actions. How do they always say? Play stupid games and win stupid prizes. If you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Either way, the next one is a malicious compliance story and it is absolutely fantastic. So this happened earlier today and it was too perfect to not share with you guys. I work in construction as the foreman for a new house build. The location is kind of strange. The house is 250 feet up a hill via a footpath only. All of our materials have to come up this footpath by hand. It's a pain in the rear to manually carry, quite literally, an entire house up this hill. One of our saving graces is having the 2 parking spots on the street at the bottom of this hill marked with official no parking signs. Unfortunately, there's an elementary school about half a block away, and the parents of the children seem to regularly, at least twice a day, think it is okay to park in our spots. Now, I consider myself a reasonable person, so if someone is parked in the spots and we don't have a delivery or a need to park a truck, I will just let it go. If we need the spots and there's someone parked there, however, I will ask them to move nicely, and most of the time they do so immediately. Until today, I get a phone call from the lumber delivery truck that is en route to our location. He says he'll be there in about 2 or 3 minutes. I let him know I will meet him at the street and make sure he has space to park. He is carrying all of the material to frame the roof of our house, which is a lot of really big lumber and will take easily an hour to bring up the hill, so naturally I did not want him parked in the middle of the street with his hazards on for an hour, when we have a perfectly good parking spot for him instead. So as I begin my trip down the hill, I notice there's a school parent sitting in her car idling. Assuming she's just waiting to pick up her kid, I walk up to her car and politely let her know that she is parked in a no parking zone, and we actually really need her to clear it to park a delivery truck. She scoffs at me and rudely states back, "It'll be just a few minutes, and your truck is not here. Take a chill pill, dude." Before I can respond, a giant lumber truck comes around the corner and I wave to him, and then gesture towards him to the woman in the car who has now put her window back up to ignore me. So I put on my best customer service smile and wave at her through the window. She put it down halfway and angrily shouts, "What?" By now the truck has pulled up alongside her car, and I politely ask her again with a stronger tone of voice to move her vehicle, reminding her that she is illegally parked in a tow-away zone. Then she gives me this wonderful idea. She says, "Can't you just guys unload around me? Jesus, it's not that hard." I give her another smile and walk away. A brilliant plan forming in my head. I instruct the delivery driver to park as closely to her as possible and block her in with the porta potty that is at one end of our reserved spots and the parked car that is parked just adjacent to our spots on the other end. He smiles because he immediately gets what I'm trying to do and proceeds to expertly block this lady and her car into a little 2 parking spot jail. We unstrap the lumber and my guys begin humping material up the hill. Meanwhile, I call the police parking enforcement to let them know about the situation. At this point in time, I was not trying to get her in trouble, I just wanted a record of why we were blocking part of the street so we don't get in trouble with the city. The very friendly traffic officer let me know that she can be there in about 30 minutes and deal with the situation for me. Wonderful. As we continue to unload the lumber, the child of the parent shows up, and wouldn't you know it, mom is just now realizing that the lumber truck is parked so close she cannot get out of her driver door to meet her kid. She awkwardly clambers across the inside of her car and stumbles out the passenger door, shooting glaring looks at me and the truck driver in the process. She loads her kid into the back and then begins to realize that she has no way of leaving. She comes storming up to myself and the driver and states, "I'm in a big hurry. You need to move your damn truck right now so I can go." Before I can respond, the driver gets a grin on his face and says, "Ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck, we had to unstrap it, and per our company policy, I'm not allowed to move the truck with any unsecured load on it. Sorry." This sends her into near aneurysm levels of blood pressure. Meanwhile, I can barely contain my laughter. "F your policy, I have somewhere to be," she barks back at him. At this point, with impeccably convenient timing, the parking enforcement officer shows up and parks behind the truck. She does not see the officer arrive, and while the officer is still getting out of her vehicle, I just casually say, "Can't you just pull out around it? It's not that hard." With the biggest crap-eating grin I've ever had, I watch as she realizes that I just used her line on her. "F you," she yells and storms back to her car and angrily clambers back in through the passenger door and into the driver's seat. At this point, the officer is walking up to myself and the driver. Before she can even introduce herself, the mom in the car slams it into reverse and storms on the gas, crashing into our porta potty and knocking it over. Then throws the car into drive and tries to mount the curb and drive on the sidewalk. The officer, driver and I are staring in disbelief as she gets halfway over the curb and then gets stuck. I can hear her screaming obscenities over the idling truck from inside her car. The officer promptly walks up to the door of the car and orders her out. My favorite part of the entire thing is watching her face go to shock as she realized she just did all of that in front of a police officer. She then gets slapped in handcuffs as the parking officer calls for a second unit, and she is promptly set on the very curb she tried to drive over. She sits on the curb yelling to the now two officers about how we told her that she could stay there and that we never asked her to move. The traffic officer responds that she was the one who was originally called when she first refused to move and that she already knows what's going on. While myself and the driver are giving a report to the second officer, my guys finish moving the remainder of the lumber and the driver finishes his statement and takes off to go back to the yard. By the end of the ordeal, she was arrested, charged with child endangerment, her kid was in the back of the car the whole time, reckless driving, destruction of property, the porta potty, and driving on a suspended license. On top of all of that, she also got her car towed, the kid went home with his grandma, and she went to spend some quality time in a cell. I never expected her to actually heed my advice to just pull out around it. But I think next time she will probably think twice about parking in a towaway zone if she ever gets a license again. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. Am I the a-hole for treating my wife like this? So I don't like the operating room and, at some point of my life, hospital. When my ex-wife had her C-section, she had a complication and hovered between life and death for a long time. It was a horrible experience to feel so helpless, and currently I deal with this in therapy. Several things have improved, but going into an operating room is still a big no-no for me. When my ex had our second kid, I was very nervous and she asked me to wait outside the operating room. When my current wife and I decided to try to have children, I made it very clear that I did not care what her choice of delivery was, but C-section I would not enter, but that I would stay by her side at all times except for the operation. She agreed and eventually became pregnant. She decided in the middle of the pregnancy that it would be a C-section and I said that was fine, but I remembered my limitation. She understood and invited her mom to take my place instead. On the day of the surgery, before she had a C-section, she asked me to come in with her because she wanted a moment of our own. I apologized, but that this was my limit and that I couldn't. She said, "Fine, I'll go with my mom then," and had a crying face. I tried talking to her, but to no avail, and my mother-in-law kept looking at me disgusted. Anyway, I don't think it would have been a hell because I was very nervous, and it definitely would not have helped at all inside the operating room. Everything went well and our daughter was born beautiful and healthy. I was already at the exit of the operating room, waiting for them, and I did not leave their side. Later, when we were alone, my wife said that I abandoned her at the most vulnerable time and left her alone when she needed me the most. I tried talking to her, but she said that now we need to focus on our daughter, but that she was disappointed in me as a partner. Apparently, my mother-in-law told family members what I did and I'm being criticized for it. My wife and I have only talked about the baby and this has been going on for a week now. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Extra info, in the case of my ex, it was C-section in parts mandatory, the first no, the second yes, and my wife's elective. And yes, in my country, C-section can be a choice as long as the pregnant woman is aware of the risk. And here, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. Do you think OP is the a-hole or not? Anyway, comment number 1, not the a-hole. I work labor and delivery. Traumatic births are very dramatic. The sights, sounds and smells of our OR will trigger any PTSD in a jiffy. We absolutely don't need a third patient in that OR, or fourth if you're having twins. I'm sorry this all happened. And another comment said, as a mom who's had 2 C-sections, I'm voting not the a-hole. You told her over and over that you couldn't do it. She knew, yes, surgery and childbirth are scary, but you warned her that you couldn't be there. It's not like you left the hospital grounds. You stayed as close by as you could. Moving forward, you should bring your wife to therapy with you so you can talk it out. Being there for her means so much more than one surgery. It's helping her raise your kid together in a household with good mental health too. Wife says she's disappointed in you, but she broke trust when she agreed to your wishes and then changed her mind. It's a two-way street. There are plenty of just us moments possible for your little family. Congratulations on her safe arrival, by the way. The next one is titled, Should Not Have Reported Me. Backstory, I need to include some more info for this to make sense. Several years ago, I purchased a home in a coastal paradise in a hot, humid and mosquito-infested Florida. The backyard was 2/3 fenced and included a tin shed that served more as a palmetto bug sanctuary than a functioning storage facility. My next-door neighbor, a decrepit old man, henceforth called X, also had a 2/3 fenced yard and his swimming pool faced my shed. One weekend, I felt inspired to tear down the old shed and began stripping the structure down. Due to the age of the shed, the bolts holding everything together were rusted through and impossible to remove without additional tools, aka tin snips. I apologized to X but informed him I would finish the work the following weekend as I work full-time during weekdays. By Tuesday, X had contacted the county inspector who was a friend of his and lied, stating I had left the shed in disrepair for months, which violates our local ordinances. The inspector informed me I needed to remove the structure immediately or I would be subjected to fines. I responded that X lied about the duration the shed was partially disassembled and also that I would have everything cleared out by the weekend as I had already informed X about 2 days prior. Now onto the revenge. I was a newish homeowner. I had not read up on all the ordinances in my county. After reviewing the list, I took special note of the lawn care rules which state grass exceeding 12 inches on a majority of the property is a violation. Yada yada yada. And since a majority is not defined, it's a de facto 50.1% of the property. So to this day, I let the lawn and weeds overgrow in the section that is only visible to him from his pool, while the remainder of my lawn remains pristine. This has been my routine for the past 4 years and will continue until the day he moves or is 6 feet under, whichever occurs first. Final note, he is on a retiree's SS budget, so I knew he could not afford to erect a fence between us. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm curious, if you ever had a neighbor like this, what would you have done? Would you have done the same as the OP? Let us know in the comments. The next one is titled, Addict Petty Revenge. Last year during the pandemic, the area I live in became a bit of a ghost town. I am in a college town, so because of distance learning, nobody wanted to live here. Makes sense, why pay rent when you don't even actually need to be at the school? My landlord was having trouble filling up these units and finally he finds this odd group of people to take over one of the units. So these new tenants move in and while one was pretty nice and chill, we will call him Terry, the other tenants Hurley and Olga are just the absolute worst. They are always high out of their minds on heroin, their guests have slashed my housemate's tires, thrown my potted plants around and stolen some of my property. We have never done anything to provoke this, I promise. We share our gardening supplies with Terry, we occasionally bake and grill for each other. It is just Hurley and Olga who have complete disregard for basic human decency. They don't even apologize when they do these things on their binges. They just say sorry and say they cannot control what their guests do sometimes. We have called the cops multiple times. They take a report, say no charges will be pressed because the damage does not hit the legal amount necessary for it to be a felony. And then they leave. The landlord won't evict them either. Anyways, the other night they started blasting country music from about 8 PM until 6 AM the next morning. I finally go over and she tells me again she cannot control what her guests do. Part 1 is I am calling the cops whenever they are being loud now. I don't care how many times these cops have to respond. If they are not going to do anything, they are going to have to suffer the same issues as me then. The fun part is that for the past 6 months, Olga has been attempting to raise a MJ plant. It is healthy, not that big yet, but it is getting there. Anyways, I bought a nice bottle of concentrated liquid fertilizer, took a 3 ml syringe and filled it up and then injected it straight into the base of the plant. Now to watch it do really well for a day or two and then suddenly shrivel up and die, just like their hopes and dreams. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.